In this video, I'm going to show you how I design and develop FAQ sections using Figma and Webflow, and also how to make them CMS driven. FAQ sections can be helpful because they allow you to show a lot of, let's say, in most cases, text information in a relatively small section, right? So if we take a look at this FAQ section, for example, it only takes up the viewport of the browser. But if you click different elements, you can show and hide a lot of content based on what specific users are interested in. They can also help with conversions, right? So if a website visitor is doubtful about your product or service before making a purchase, for example, or getting on a call with you, you can answer the questions they might have. One more benefit of this accordion type of layout, I'd say, is that it also makes websites more interactive and more fun to use. Before actually creating the or designing and developing the component, it's important to come up with relevant content for the sections. And there are two questions that you can ask yourself in order to come up with the right information for these types of layout. First of all, you could ask yourself what questions prospects might have. This information you can get by paying attention to what questions you often get asked on the phone, for example. So let's say you have a sales team and they always have to answer the same question. It might be more efficient to answer this question directly on the website, right? And that's not only true for calls. You can also take a look at emails. Another question would be, what information do you want visitors to read, right? So there might be information that they are not actively searching for on your website, but there are information that might be relevant for them before they buy your product or consider hiring you for the service. So you can add this information there as well. One more tip I'd like to mention is if you use tracking tools such as Hotjar to analyze website visitors' behavior, this can help to see what questions are most clicked and therefore most relevant. And based on this data, you could consider reorganizing the items in your FAQ element. This is what I figured out when once creating a landing page designed for a design challenge, where we could see directly what information customers are most interested in. Once we've defined the content for our FAQ section, the next step would be to create the layout. I usually work in Figma to create the visual design, and this is the layout I came up with. And as you'll see, it's not a super fancy design, or it's not making use of decorative assets and so on. And that was actually the goal for the section. So I don't want to have any elements that could be possibly distracting, because for this type of section, all that's important is the content. I want visitors to find the information that they are looking for fast, right? So we have a large headline that indicates what the section is about. Then we have our questions, and with a small arrow and separator lines, we indicate that we actually have clickable areas here, right? And once this is built, those will actually be links. So also the cursor changes from a regular mouse to a pointer. Two more things I'd like to point out regarding the layout. Make sure that the FAQ section is not too long. So you don't want to have 20-30 elements below each other, because then it'll just take too much time for the user to find the relevant information. It also doesn't look great to have a super long list on your home or pricing page. So for these cases, I would consider sort of like a help center environment with all the questions users might have regarding how to use your product or how your service works. My personal preference is like to have 5 to 7 items in the list. And another important design decision is the width of the element. So it could fill the entire width of your site, but then it can get difficult to read the text elements. I'd suggest maybe having a width of maybe 700-800 pixels max. Yeah, I think that's most enjoyable then to read. So here you can see an example page where I'm going to build the FAQ section. And the great thing is that the layout you just saw for the FAQ section is a relatively common one, and it has probably been built thousands of times by designers and developers. So I'm not going to build the entire structure from scratch because I know there are hundreds of templates available. We'll still apply a custom design, but the setup of the individual divs to create this layout we can copy. And there's another benefit to it, which we'll talk about later. So the layout that I'm going to use is from the Accessible Components library by FinSuite. And they have two simple FAQ layouts, one that uses custom JavaScript for the interaction and one that uses the standard Webflow interactions that can be adjusted directly in the Webflow interactions panel. And I'm going to use this one. If you consider to have, like, let's say a more complex setup, for example, or you're looking for some specific features, then the JavaScript solution could be for you. So for one use case would be that you want to start with one item always being open once the page gets loaded, or when you open then another item in the list to have the others closed again. So those are a bit more complex interactions that at least I didn't find a way to create those natively in Webflow. So that would be a great use case, but as I'm not going to use this feature and want more flexibility in terms of how the interactions behave, I'm going to use the sort of standard Webflow interactions version for this component. Okay, so I just dragged this element into my section that I created, which uses just a basic div structure with all our section stylings. So we have a padding on the left, on the right, a container for a max width, which in this case will be actually I usually have the container large on it, but here we are using container small to constrain the maximum width of this FAQ component. Then we have a embed code, which will that's the other benefit that I was talking about. So FinSuite is providing some custom code, which makes this FAQ component more accessible. We don't need to show this code element and it won't show up on the published site, but I'll hide it here as well. And yeah, so in terms of accessibility, I don't know all the details that are happening here, but you'll notice that all these FAQ elements have some custom attributes that will add this accessibility to the component. And so one example that I noticed is that you can actually navigate the different items via your keyboard and the tab key and open or close them by pressing enter. So just as an example. The next thing I'm going to do is styling the accordion element. And therefore, I first want to get rid of all the additional items because we'll make this FAQ section CMS driven. So we will have the amount of items that we'll have here will depend on the items that we create in our CMS. We also don't need this message. Now I'm going to, actually before designing this, I'm going to create a new collection list called FAQ, and each of them has a question and an answer. And for the answer element, I use a rich text just to have more flexibility here. And then I'm also adding a numbers field, which allow us to order the individual elements. Okay, create collection. And now I'll go ahead and add all the different questions. Okay, next step, connect this FAQ component to our collection. So I press Command E to add a new collection list. Move this here to the top And I always give the collection elements here meaningful classes. So in this case, it would be, actually, let's just keep the current ones. You could rename this to whatever, FAQ collection and so on, but I don't want to update all of them, so for now, so I'll just call them FS accordion -1, and then that's our collection list wrapper. And to be faster, I copy this name, go to the collection list, remove wrapper, then we have this name, and we can also do this for the item collection item. Okay, great. Now I double click to connect this to our FAQ, and now you can see that for each item we have our question here. Right, so now we take this entire accordion element, or actually we could take FS accordion item, we can use this class and use it here to apply the same styling we have for this item to the CMS generated item. Now I take the header and paste it, and after that I also go to the item again and add the bottom part for the answer. Okay, this item is our static one, we don't need this anymore. So now we have only our CMS driven ones. Now we connect the content, which is the question and the, okay, where's our answer? All right, so it doesn't show the answer because that's a rich text. So we add a rich text element here, give it our text, rich text style. I'm not happy with my current style here actually. Yeah, still, I'll keep the style that we already have from our template. Remove this part and now connect this to our answer. Now I have all our questions and answers on the side. One more setting here, the sort order should be ordered by order, smallest to largest numbers. I don't have any numbers applied, but if we set numbers in the CMS, Webflow will sort these items based on the value. So I'm gonna save this. And now we can go ahead and make sure that the styling works. So first of all, this one is styled probably as a headline, but here I don't use any predefined stylings. Here we have a custom class for this, we don't need this. So I think I will just change this to text size medium and give it also a text weight of medium to fit the overall design of my website. Yeah, by the way, those class names are a bit weird. It says FS accordion 1 header 4 because I used these elements previously, and I deleted all the unused classes, but Webflow still thinks that they are like conflicts and therefore renames them. Yeah, so actually I'd now go ahead and update the names, but I'm a bit afraid that then our interactions could stop working for this element because they are connected. Ah, okay. I still had the interactions in here. Maybe that's the reason why. They are connected to those classes. Okay. Yeah, so this one, I'm only seeing this problem here, so I can actually go ahead and rename this also without being worried about the interactions. I'll actually leave this class here. Okay, it says this class exists, but it shouldn't matter. It should have the same styling. So I remove this class and keep the one I like, which actually has the... Okay, so this still seems to be existing in a project and has the styling applied that we're going to use. Yeah, so I'll keep this class. You'll see I have some padding here on the top and on the left. I got rid of the padding to make the text align to the left. Yeah, that's basically all the styling we're using here. Oh yeah, and I have a pointer element to indicate that this entire element here is clickable. and the interaction happens by the interaction that we have applied here. Right, get rid of these ones. So okay. Yeah, so this needs to be connected. Those problems you see here, you won't have them when you take the component for the first time. I thought I cleaned everything up, like the unused interactions and animations, but it seems like this didn't work. Yeah, I'll just quickly reconnect it, and then you can maybe also see how this works. So basically, when we click this element, we want to change the size of this body from 0 to 100%, and also change its state from hidden to show. Yeah, so sort of like this. Okay, so I just double checked in my actual portfolio project what the setup for the interaction looks like, and the interactions do not get applied to the actual body of the FAQ element, but to its parent element, which should be a FS accordion content. I must have accidentally deleted this class. Yeah, once I copied and pasted them into our collection list item element. So I'm quickly creating a new div here. The one I accidentally deleted and that you'll already have in the project, so you don't need to follow the steps. But yeah, it should be FS accordion 1 and then content, which wraps all our content. Okay, like this. And now we can update I can update the interaction and apply all those changes. Okay, save, preview, and as you can see, it's not working. Looks like we haven't applied this to classes, so to all children within this FS accordion header element. Okay, so one mistake I made, I applied this effect to only children of our interaction trigger, but this is actually a sibling. Great. Now regarding the styling, there are a few more things that I'd like to adjust. So first of all, the text should align with the question. So also for the body element, I reduced the padding to 0 on the left and on the right. Yeah, this one we already styled earlier. You can see that I removed the background color and the padding. Now we'll still have to make sure that all the spacings work correctly. So here in the example, you can see that I'm using a spacing here of precise 27 pixels. That's of course not the value we want to use, but just make sure we stick to our spacing system that we have. For me, that's usually 16 pixels, 20, 24, 32, and so on. So I like to use those full RAM numbers. Maybe they have a bit too much padding on the top. Let's reduce this to 0, I think. That looks better. So it's easier to see that this element belongs to the one above. I think I'd like to add some padding here. I don't want the text range into the area where the arrows are, at least not for desktop. So let's put 2 RAMs here, 2.5. You see I'm making some detailed design decision here in the development process, which are often usually done in Figma. This works because I'm responsible for the design and the development, and I know that I'll make like detailed adjustments here. So for example, if I here have a weird spacing of 27 pixels that I'm not using anymore, this could happen, right? I fix it just here directly in development. But when working with multiple people, I'd always make sure that you have the pixel perfect design ready in Figma, just to avoid any unnecessary confusions and back and forth with your designer. Okay, yeah, this looks good. One more thing I like to add is the separator line, and we want this line for all of the elements. Maybe for the last it's not even necessary. We could define it in Webflow as well. But yeah, I think for this case we'll do it for all the items to have here like a small border of 1 pixel, and then I push the transparency down to 20%. And that should look not so good at all. Let's see how I styled this here. Yeah, it's 1 pixel. Yeah, we can make the stroke a bit less strong in terms of color. Let's see what that does. Yeah, now it looks like in our Figma design. I think the width is still a bit too high for this layout, so I'm actually considering updating my global container small to something like 42. Keep in mind that if you're using the same styling system, in my case it's client first, that the change might apply to other sections on your website as well. Okay, but I think that looks better. And I also think that the arrow icon could align more with the border on where the separation lines stop. So select this element and put this to 0 as well. Too much. Let's space it in a little bit. Yeah, I think that's better. And if this is open, I think we can have some more space here below the paragraph. And you probably notice how I'm again designing, right? I'll do a combination of both design and development here in Webflow, which is fun. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, last step would be to see how this works on mobile. Looks good. Yep, looks good. Here I actually want to use the entire width because of our space constraints here. I want to make some updates to the content because here you can see it sort of looks better. One reason is that we have apply a small spacing between paragraphs. We have our link here. Let's see if the list works, which is a great benefit of working with rich text elements, yes. But yeah, we want to space out our paragraphs a little to make it easier to read. So for this element, we could say, okay, we can't make changes to the styling of a rich text element if it's within a collection list item. So I'll temporarily create a new rich text element, which has the same class applied. And then I can go ahead and say for all paragraphs nested inside our class, we want to add a bit of spacing. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay, and there also was a link which looks weird. So I'll also briefly create a link here. Let's just link to my about page. Okay. And style this as well. All links nested inside our FAQ should first have a weight of normal, but we can use a different color here. Let's make it blue. Yeah, maybe a nicer blue. I'll introduce a new blue to my website soon for links. And yeah, but I don't want to mess with the font weight here. And also say on hover, I want an underline. Okay, how does that look? Still weird. Yeah, so I had this before, and I think the reason it's still bold here is that it's defined this way by the styles we have in the item, collection list item here in the CMS. So here you can see that a bold was applied. So I remove this, save it, and now it looks fine. And here we have our FAQ element. Great. One thing I forgot was the headline, frequently asked questions. And yeah, let's add this as well. So I'll go into our padding vertical where we have the component. And above that, I create a new div and a heading. And for this element, I want to say text align center, and this should be a heading 2 and gets the headline frequently asked questions. I'm working with spacing blocks here according to the design system that I'm using. Add a padding bottom, padding large. Okay, so now we have our headline, and this works on all screen sizes. Nice, that's it. All right, thank you very much for watching my first tutorial here on YouTube on designing and developing with Webflow. If you enjoyed it, feel free to support this channel with a thumbs up and by subscribing. And if you also want to learn how I implement the other component that I showed earlier, which allows us to have a few more JavaScript functionalities for the FAQ element, check out this video here as well. Thanks. Bye.